And welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's Rinkwise Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Marinofsky, joined today by Patrick Donnelly. Pat, what's up?
Not much. Good to have some hockey back after a nice little layoff for the holidays. Fortunately, I didn't have anything to go to because I was kind of sick over the holidays, pumping myself full of
Ooh,
Dayquil and NyQuil. But we're back.
sucks. I was sick during Thanksgiving, which was terrible. But I was like, watch, I'll get sick for Christmas too. And I didn't, but I'm very sorry. What was it, just like a little cold?
Yeah, I kind of like a sinus thing or something. Like 2 days after Christmas while I was in New Hampshire, so I was just kind of a zombie up there, which was annoying. But we're back.
Didn't stop you from hitting the slopes, I can
Well,
imagine.
no, it was the I only went twice because like I told you, like my brother's pass was weird, so like it's not as fun by yourself.
It isn't.
Um, so the second day I went was like kind of the first morning I wasn't feeling great. And I also like the day before one of the lifts I was on got stuck for like 40 minutes. So I was just
Oh, I'd
that
be
I'm
out.
gonna
I'd
blame
jump
that.
off.
I was just sitting out there in the cold. And I was like in no man's land too. I wasn't near the top, I wasn't near the bottom. I was just in the middle. Um, but it was fine.
And there's probably like no cell service either out there, right?
Oh no, the one I was at had cell service. Some of them don't, but
Okay. Well, while you were doing that, I played a lot of pond hockey. A lot of pond puck. Christmas Day and then the day after Christmas, which was nice. A lot of hockey played throughout. Obviously, we had the prep tournaments, which we'll get to right before Christmas. Then we had some MIAA tournaments right after. I was at the Pete Frady's Winter Classic, which was really well done. And then Arlington played CM on New Year's. There was also the tournament that Zavarian hosts out at in Canton, which I didn't get a chance to get out to go see. So we were busy. Like it's, I always think of it like it's the time of year where yeah, it's the holidays, but hockey rolls on. So we really only got like Christmas Day, and then outside of that, there was certainly a lot to digest, and we'll get into that. So we haven't done a podcast in a couple weeks. The only reason we didn't do one last week was purely because it was Christmas, and Christmas came at a really funny time. So we'll sort of catch up on some prep holiday stuff. Then we'll get into MIAA. We'll start with girls prep. We're gonna start with girls prep today. It was an exciting batch of tournaments. You had the Harrington, obviously that you were at. You had the Watkins tournament. The boys Watkins actually is coming up this coming weekend. You were at the Harrington. What were some of your big overarching thoughts and takeaways?
yeah. Overarching thought from the Harrington was just how good Williston looks this year. We knew they'd be good. I had them, I think, three coming into the year. But you never know how it's going to go. Like, you lose a player like Monique Lyons, and obviously Williston was very deep around her, but she did a lot for that team, obviously, with all the production that she had. So you always wonder, like, what's going to happen when you lose a player like that. And they had some other losses too, but their top two lines, I think, I mean, it's tough because like you don't want to say they're better than they were last year after losing someone like Monique Lyons, but I think their top two lines are kind of in a better spot. They're like both
Right,
like
deeper.
yeah, I mean, I think they're a little more well-rounded. Um, you know, and you could roll either of those lines out and it would, you could say either is your first line and you wouldn't blink. Like, they were just that good. Mia Daly, um, someone who impressed in the spring, like last year as a freshman, and then again at like the mass hockey stuff in the spring. Um, and she seems to have taken a big jump from the end of last season to now. Especially her release, it's a lot heavier. You look at some of the other freshmen last year, like Brooke Schluter and Riley Stalker, who are now having excellent starts to their sophomore season. Schluter scored in all four games of the Harrington. She was awesome on a line with Violet Carroll and Zola Pikarski. And Nora Curtis, obviously an elite prospect. She's committed to Cornell and stuff, but has just found, I guess, another level. Um, as far as like her all around game, she's the total package, and that was just on display for both of those lines at the Harrington. And on the defense for Wilson, last year you look at the top team Nobles, and they have all these high end defenders, and they have a couple forwards having career years. Williston's in a different spot where they don't have one or two defenders who are kind of, or I guess last year, they had a forward who was doing that, but they don't have anyone on defense who's kind of grabbing the headlines and putting up all this production from the blue line. Like it's all very, steady, understated, good puck moving, good stick, good gap control, making quick decisions throughout the defense core for them, which I think is just such a big difference maker when you're getting that throughout your three pairs. And someone like Katie Putt and Alyssa Frazier, I thought had great tournaments. And obviously Olivia Farabee's doing her thing in net. So big major props to Williston right now.
Yeah, they seem to be rolling. I also just think after last season, they sort of seem like a team that's on a mission. And you even told me just kind of when we were chatting about the Harrington in general, um, was that they sort of ran the table at the tournament. It wasn't
Yep.
ever really in doubt, right?
Yeah. Let me think through here. Let's see if I can find the
It's been a
schedule.
couple of weeks. That's the wild part. Like, I feel like
Yeah,
we've been
like
through two lifetimes. It technically was last year.
yeah,
So
I mean, like they beat Westminster 5-1. They beat Lawrence Academy 9-0. They beat, we talk about Lawrence, like, you're having a great start to the year. Then you start the Harrington with Williston and Nobles. Um, and Williston obviously just rolled them 9-0. And then they beat Nobles in probably the best game of the weekend. That just had sort of a different feel than any other game I saw. And they beat
didn't
them 2
Ethan Fuller
nothing.
go to you? Didn't Ethan Fuller go to that game with you?
He was there for about like the first two periods because Nobles has a basketball holiday tournament too, so he had a break. So I told him come over if you want to see some high end hockey,
There you go.
and it didn't disappoint. But even then, like Nobles struggled to sustain offense, and Williston just kind of did their thing, and then they shut out BB&N 3-0, who BB&N I thought had a great tournament too, and it was sort of all Williston there in the final. So like you said, ran the table.
And then elsewhere, I mean, Thayer is on fire. They win the Dexter Southfield tournament. Cushing wins the Watkins. What else have you what else has caught your eye over the last couple weeks?
So Thayer is one to watch for sure because, I had them just outside of my top 10 coming into the year, last year making the large school tournament, like, they have Morgan McGathey on the top line, Kate Sullivan on her wing, and, you know, Abby DeAngelis on the back end. And, McGathey and Sullivan accounted for a lot of their production last year. So you just kind of wonder what the depth would have looked like around them. They have a new coach and Michael Flynn. Um, and they've been on fire to start, like we said. They've shut out Rivers 4-0 in the championship, and Rivers is a good team. Big a tie with Dexter 1-1. They win in a shootout, I believe. And kind of what I wrote in the notes is, it's not coming from just Morgan McGathey. Obviously, like she's doing her thing. She has 14 goals in 9 games. That's pretty good. Um,
Insane.
but Lydia Keelty is
That is completely insane.
yeah, yeah. Lydia Kilty's having a great start to the year. She has 7 goals. Renna Boone, who's a Delaware commit when they get their women's hockey program going next year, she has 6 goals. Kate Sullivan has 12 points in 9 games. And, on the back end, you got Emerson Fisher Bailey's had a great start to her year after kind of a, under the radar freshman year last year. She might have been an 8th grader last year. I don't have it in front of me. But again, just sort of as as good as you could ask for so far for Thayer, for getting production throughout the lineup, not just your top guns. Um, and yeah, I think they're definitely one that's been charging up our rankings. And then elsewhere, we mentioned Cushing and the Watkins and Loomis and the Patsy K Auden. Those are two teams that, like Loomis especially, they start the season with a tough loss to Nobles. But they've been on a roll. Lindsay Stepnowski, Chloe Obser, Ellie LaChance have been on fire lately. And, they beat Andover for the second straight year in the autumn. It's technically a tie. They won in the shootout, but still an impressive result. And, Cushing, I think the biggest thing that has stood out for them, um, you know, Julia Lambert and, Maddie Soderquist and, some of their top guns are getting it done. But someone we've talked about a lot with MIAA hockey is Bella Freitas. But we can't like not talk about her because she's had so much success early on in the prep season where, you're watching her last season and over the summer, it's like, yeah, but what's it going to be like when, she's not the guy or the player for
The
St.
go-to
Mary's.
player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and she's doing it again. She's getting it done. I think she's over a point per game. She had an awesome Watkins tournament. She's got 10 goals in 9 games, 15 points. Um,
Heck of a start.
yeah, and we talked about Cushing like against Williston, a bit of a prove it game, and they take on Groton, who's one of the better teams in Prep 2 at the Watkins, and they beat them. I think was it 4-0. I don't have it in front of me, but
Been two
um,
weeks ago now. That's
yeah.
why I can't get
Um,
over that.
it might have been 4-1 because I think Sadie Bellissimo had 44 saves on 45 shots, and she's been someone who we talked about at the start of the year how excited Valerie Bono was for her going into the season, and she's been as advertised. She's been really good. One thing too, I did take away from the Watkins tournament was kind of New Hampton's up and downs. I think they went 1-2-1, I believe. They lost to Groton, and obviously that was a game they deserved to win. Groton's top line just kind of got it done and kind of carried them there. Yeah, 1-2-1 at the Watkins. They bounced back with a 4-0 win over Worcester Academy at the end, but they tied Deerfield. They get shut out by Berkshire. They lose to Groton in overtime. Before the Watkins, they lost to Thayer. So they're one to watch where I think they're better than they showed that last stretch before the holiday break. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how they respond coming out of the break.
Yeah, it will be. And I think for you, like when you did your girls prep rankings last week, um, not if I remember correctly, not a ton changed, but enough changed that it was newsworthy.
Yeah, Williston stayed at 1. Dexter moved up to 2 from 3. They went 3-0-1 at their holiday tournament. The only real blemish was, the tie with Thayer, but Thayer's proven they're a good team. And, they took care of business against teams they should beat, Brooks, Nichols, Hill School. Loomis Chafee up to 3 from 4. Good showing at the PKO tournament again. Nobles drops from 2 to 4. And, that's just they had a good Harrington tournament. It's just the loss to Williston, but they took care of things against Lawrence, Milton, Westminster. BB&N stays at 5. They had a chance to move up, but losing to Williston in the championship, obviously a tough break for them. But they had a great tournament. Like I said, the thing that stood out for BB&N the most was sort of the physicality that they had, and sort of how they just sort of kind of just dominated teams physically from start to finish in a lot of their wins. And Cushing, we have them from 9 to 6. We just talked about them. Andover stays put at 7. They went 3-0-1 at the PKO tournament. When they beat Tabor, Hotchkiss, Lawrenceville, so they're kind of getting things on track after the season opening loss to Dexter. Thayer up to 8 from 10. Groton to 9 from 8. They went 2-1-1 at the Watkins, the big win over New Hampton, but they they tied Berkshire, um, fell to Cushing in the final, beat Deerfield, and then New Hampton from 6 to 10, not quite out of the top 10 yet. There are some teams kind of behind them in the hunt that still looking for a little more from, whether it's Rivers or Phillips Exeter. Exeter's 6-0-0, but kind of waiting until they hit the meat of their schedule a little more. So yeah.
Interesting slate of games. Interesting slate of stuff. Now we'll move over to boys prep. The boys prep tournaments were same time as the girls. I would love next year if the tournaments were like a little bit more before Christmas, just because it's so
Yeah,
tight. And then
it's just the way how late Thanksgiving was, and you had Christmas on a Wednesday. Just tough circumstances.
very tough. To me, like we'll get into Brunswick a bit in a sec. They won the Kevin Much. Holderness won the Groton Lawrence tournament. That's not a huge surprise. Avon won the Avon Christmas Classic. That also wasn't a surprise. The big surprise of like I would consider like the big four tournaments was Andover. Andover for the first
Yes.
time ever won the Floodmar. I think that's incredible. Now they've only been in it consistently since I think 1993. So I think the tournament's like 59 years old. So people are like, it's for the first time in 59 years, and it's like, not really, because they weren't in it the entire
Well,
time.
first time in 22 years is still,
Yes, it's still staggering, and it's wild to me because Phillips
or no,
Andover.
32.
Yeah,
Yeah.
22. Oh my God,
I've still got my 2010s brain going.
it's I agree with you. I think of like I used to think like, oh, the 90s or the 80s were like, a decade or so ago, and now I'm like, holy crap, that's like 40, 30 years. Um And I'm shocked at that. I think when you look at Phillips Andover, it's obviously one of the top prep schools in the world. And you would think, obviously it's hard to get in, but you would expect that, you know, you'd have some more success over the years at the Floodmar, and they haven't. And so they finally win it this year. They finally won it this year. And I think to me, there were three big takeaways from Andover. Number one, Graydon Robertson Palmer was dominant. Not the highest point getter on Andover, but still a lot of NHL scouts were there to watch the different prospects at the Floodmar, and I think he raised his stock the most by far. He's a two-way center. He's committed to Dartmouth. Dartmouth clearly has, a really good prospect on their hands in him. I think it's tough. Obviously, there is sort of that bias from scouts of kids coming out of prep school where it's like, oh, what are they going to do in junior? And they did that with Caden Harrington last year of Holderness, and now they all want to draft him in the third or fourth round. So, because he's tearing it up in Lincoln out in the USHL, but I think Robertson Palmer's a really good two-way center. One of those players that you never don't notice. Like, you always notice him every time he's on the ice. He's doing something, even if he's not producing. So he raised his stock. He had a phenomenal tournament. I think he has moved into my upper echelon of best players in prep hockey. It's like 5 or 6 guys. I'll give them to you right now, actually. I'll give you my
Okay.
5 or 6. I'll give you my 6 best players in prep hockey in no order. So Robertson
Undisputed
Palmer.
list. Nobody can disagree. This is
Exactly. Nobody can disagree with this. Someone asked me this, and I said, huh. And I think it's pretty clear. Robertson Palmer, to me, is in there. Ryan Chudzinski, another 07 from Dexter, is in there. Dominant player, controls the game every time he's out there. Everett Baldwin, the top draft prospect in New England prep hockey this year. Dominant defenseman. Notice him every time he's on the ice. Physical, all that stuff. Then you get into the 08. The 108, I think, who it would be, is Joey Salandra from Brunswick. I believe he leads the entire region in points. Harvard commit, dominant player, won the Kevin Much tournament in an overtime penalty shot for Brunswick. And then you get to the 09s. I think it's Carter Meyer and Finn Sears. And to me, it's those 6 guys who are the 6 best. And I think Robertson Palmer at the Andover, or not the Andover tournament, at the Floodmar moved himself into that category of just dominant players in prep. But I got off track there a little bit, which I tend to do.
Oh,
But
that can be the headline of the podcast. Evan Marinofsky's 6 box office boys prep players.
that's right, and no one will get pissed off by it. Everybody will be fully in an agreement.
No texts from coaches.
Nothing.
No
Nope.
emails from parents about where's my
No.
guy.
No, exactly. That's
Undisputed.
official. That's official. I'm making it official. So that's that. Rui Han had a really good tournament. He was someone I loved throughout the fall. Thought he was a breakout guy, big, skilled, really good shot. Committed to Yale after the Floodmar. So good for him. Congratulations to him. Win a championship.
He's someone I
and he
saw
commit.
last fall at Mass State tournaments who really stood out as well.
That's right. That's right. So he's continued his ascent. Someone again, you can commit as a senior in prep. It happens. Guys are a little bit late bloomers, and you can bloom even later in junior. So he had a great tournament. And then I think one of the defining things of the Floodmar, at least the past 3 years, has sort of been, your breakout goalie. There's always one goalie that's just, has a breakout performance and puts his name on the map. And in 2021, it was Thatcher Bernstein. 22 was Sam Caulfield. 23 was Blake McMiniman of Kimball Union. And this year was Chase Anderson of Andover. Chase Anderson had a phenomenal showing. I think his worst game was the championship he let up 4, but they still won every other game up until that point. He only let in 1 goal each game. Big. I would expect he commits somewhere soon, given that I think he's 6'3". I also heard that he got on the NHL Central scouting list from this. So, or at least he might. So he's another one. I think he's someone that his numbers so far this year are outstanding. 171 goals against, 945 save percentage. He's played, I think, pretty much played every game for Andover. So he's been outstanding. So Andover, big breakout for them. Really good to see. Congratulations to them. And then I don't mean to gloss over Holderness and Avon. But hey, I'm not surprised Avon won the Christmas Classic. You also have Holderness winning the Groton Lawrence. One other team that I think is really interesting, and we'll talk about them for a bit here, is Tilton. Tilton is 8-1-1. Tilton made my rankings last week. They've been kicking ass. They won the Brooks Pingree. They beat Holderness earlier this year. So they're for real. I mean, they are for real team. The leading point getter is Pete Silverman, post grad, who was absolutely filthy at Winthrop High
Yeah,
School.
Winthrop
Like,
kid.
just dominant at Winthrop. And he's been dominant here. 7 goals, 11 points, 10 games. I mean, he's someone I would think if you're a junior program, you'd be all over that kid. He's an '06. And then in net, Matt Wood, the juniors, Matt Wood and Hunter Marshall have played a lot. They've been really good. Senior Marty Pierce has got in there a bit. He's played well. So Brooks McQuaid has that team going. They're getting production from everywhere. Max Gagnon, Caden Yaman, Cam Fahey, Ty Seymour, Jeremy D'Souza. Like they're deep, they're older. That's a team I expect to make an impact throughout the year. And I think when we're looking at teams prior to the year, it's like, all right, there's obviously the high-end talent, but who's older? Who's got veteran guys who've been around? And they have that. So congratulations to them. Belmont Hill won the Lawrenceville tournament. And then St. Mark's won the Barber. So good for them. St. Mark's, Belmont Hill are both teams that are going to be in or around the top 10 all year. And I think, as we've seen, when you win one of these tournaments, it bodes well. Like it sets you on a good path for the rest of the year, helps you in the rankings, helps you with RPI and all that stuff. So good for them. Good for all those teams. So really the only big surprise was Andover. I'd say that's really the only big surprise of those tournament wins.
For over 20 years, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey has been helping hockey players of all ages develop their individual skills and improve on all aspects of their game. Through structured drills and innovative training equipment, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey's intense on-ice instruction challenges each student to be the best at their ability. Find a hockey clinic or summer camp that is right for you today at nateshockey.com. That's N-A-T-E-S hockey.com. Eric Nate's Euro Hockey, train to be the best.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
Hey, it's Bobby Moran, Director of Athletics at Thayer Academy. You know what? Experience matters, and Thayer Academy's professional coaching staff understands how to work with each student athlete to help them succeed. Our coaches and faculty are committed to ensuring both 5th to 12th graders feel known, connected, and prepared. This is Thayer's secret sauce, nurturing each student to reach their full potential. Here, success is truly a team sport. Are you ready for your child to take the next step? See what Thayer has to offer at thayer.org. That's THAYER.org.
I was at the Absolute Filth Hockey Wax website the other day, and I was wondering to myself what Absolute Filth's Dragon's Blood smells like. Is it fiery, or maybe it's sweet like the scent of victory after a triple overtime game? Probably a mystical aroma that'll magically make you dominate the ice. Knowing the folks at Absolute Filth, I bet it's part fierce dragon, part subtle smokiness, with a dash of awesomeness jammed into that giant puck of wax. Whatever it is, I'm definitely grabbing some dragon's blood for my next game. Gonna slap that wax on my stick and play with fire. Sorry, boys, but the locker room's about to smell like a medieval fantasy tonight. Check out Dragon's Blood and more over at Absolute Filth's website, hockeywax.com. Perfect for the holidays, and they've even got a 2-for-1 sale going on right now with free shipping. Awaken your inner dragon and rule the ice at hockeywax.com.
You have your number one team from the start of the season. Brunswick won the Kevin Much.
Yeah.
Kind of dominating like Williston is on the girls' side.
That's the thing, and it's interesting because Brunswick was supposed to be reloading this year. They weren't going to be they were going to be in and around the top 10. Mike Kennedy kept kind of mentioning like, oh, that year in 21-22 when we were, I think they won the large school title, might be more our speed this year. And to me right now, they're the number one team. Do I think they are the best team top to bottom on paper in the region? No, I don't. I think that's still Kimball Union, but they're playing like it. They're playing like it. So again, like, and they have a tough schedule. So you never can, they were just playing. That's why they have more they have more games played than I think everybody right now. Joe Salandra, 30 points in 14 games is bananas. Mason St. Louis, 24 points in 14 games. That's bananas. Senior Oliver Saja, uncommitted. I think if I'm a Division I program like an Ivy or an Atlantic School or an ECAC team, I'm looking at this kid. 22 points in 14 games. And to me, what was most telling from that Kevin Much tournament, I went to a day of it, and I saw them play Rivers. And I know Mike Kennedy, and Kennedy had Sajo's line, which is the second line, go up against that Rivers 09 line of Pandolfo, Sears, and Meyer that entire game. And Sajo did a damn good job of shutting them down. And to me, like, I think that is, colleges, yes, everybody wants the high-end point getters, but you also want 4-year guys who are going to be really good two-way forwards if you're looking for forwards who are going to be there for 4 years. And to me, that's a guy. And so I think I put him with Corwith Simmers as these seniors who should get a commitment at some point. And then you Keegan Kazan, I had on my list of sophomores who could get calls around January 1 because that's when they're eligible to. And then Cam Manella, freshman 09 defenseman, has jumped right in. I don't think he was supposed to play the full year. He was going to kind of alternate between that and Mid-Fairfield's 15 team because Mid-Fairfield's team is full season. But 17 points in 14 games, runs the top power play, 09. I think he should absolutely be invited to try out for that USN TDP team in the spring. So it was really cool to see them play Rivers because you have like 4 guys on the ice who could end up playing in Michigan next year. So they've been great. Dylan Lee Stack has been phenomenal, 923 save percentage and a 217 goals against. He's been great. So I'm not surprised by Brunswick because like they're always good and they find a way. But I guess I'm surprised that they're as good as they are. I think we talked about this in our last time we met. So Brunswick's been good early so far, and they're my number one. They're my new number one.
Yeah, and one other team that you highlighted for boys prep is Salisbury, struggling to start. What do you make of them?
Yeah, they always start slow.
Yep.
That's the one thing. Like they're notoriously a slow starter. So people are like, "Oh, you ranked them number one, and now they're out of the rankings." And it's like, well, they start slow every year. I think I prefaced that in those rankings that like they could easily fall out. And if I
You should have
didn't,
spotted them at like 7 to start.
I should have. Yeah, I should just like to be careful. And if I didn't write that, then at least I had it in my head. I swear. But they had a rough go of it. They had a really rough go of it at the Floodmar. Scored 1 goal in their first 3 games before beating Hotchkiss in the 8 a.m. last place game on that final Sunday, which shocking. I saw Salisbury for a little bit the first day, and I was like, oh, I'll catch them on the last day in the championship or the consolation game, like at least. And then they were in that. But, they've struggled to score. I still think this lineup is much better than they've shown. Connor Davis still has 10 points in 9 games. Got guys like Ryan Headley. Chris Baird Gajdos is a guy, an 08 defenseman the colleges are looking at. So not the best showing for them. They'll have a chance to make up for it at the True Prep Cup this coming weekend. And then they'll have some big matchups. They have Cushing mid-January. Cushing's another team that I think fell out of my top 10. Or they did fall out of my top 10. It's been a minute since I've seen that top 10, but they did fall out of the top 10. So yeah, I think the most shocking thing through 1 month is that Cushing and Salisbury are not in my top 10. I still think Salisbury gets back in. Cushing is still young, little inexperienced up front. Missing Chase Warsofsky is not going to help anybody. So to me, those two, I think my 2 biggest surprises so far have been Cushing and Salisbury being out of the top 10. But that Salisbury, I think, they'll be back in. They will be in the Elite 8, I would assume.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we've talked about every week with our rankings, where it's the struggle of what have you done for me lately versus what we think these teams will be at the end of the year.
That's the biggest thing. And I think with Salisbury, I keep going back to like, yeah, they're not a top 10 team at the moment, but I think when I'm doing my final top 10 in like late February, they're going to be somewhere in the, 3, 4, 5 range. Because they're good. That's a good team. We didn't rank them number 1 because we're insane. We ranked them number 1 because they're legitimately good on paper. So I expect Andrew Will is one of the best coaches in prep. They will pull out of the nosedive for sure.
Yeah. Boys
And then,
MIAA, or do you
yeah,
want to do
boys
girls?
MIAA. Boys MIAA.
So a couple holiday tournaments to keep track of. You had the Pete Frady's Classic, and then the other day you were at Arlington Catholic and CM. Um, what are your sort of overarching takeaways so far? I know you have St. John's Prep here as one note.
Yeah, St. John's Prep, I moved them to 4. Actually, I think if you look at our YouTube channel, which you should also go subscribe to, our high school preview is titled like "Who Can Beat St. John's Prep?" And a couple teams have beat St. John's.
Turns out anyone.
Yeah. No, they're good. They've taken a hit. They lost a lot. Christian Hansen knew going into this year that they were not going to be the power they were the last 2 years. He knew that, so it's not a surprise. They were at 4 on December 30th, and they lost to Reading in overtime New Year's Day night, 3-2. So they will fall most likely in the rankings we do next week, but they'll still most likely be in the top 10. But they've been a surprise. I mean, I saw them twice at the not the Pope France, at the Pete Frady's Winter Classic, which has always done well by them. St. John's Prep always has fire jerseys that they make for the Pete Frady's Winter Classic, and they were really good this year, and they were great last year too, I remember. But there are a lot of new faces and new roles. They have a couple good players, especially on D, that I wrote about. If you guys want to go check that out on the website, Mason Luciano up front leads the way. So Braden Wade's another one who was really good. I noticed over the couple games, but I think that's the thing for me where like I'm not shocked that they're struggling a little bit. Like they lost a ton, so that's gonna happen. Zavarian lost a lot. They fell out of my top 10. They fell completely out, which again is really weird. But that's the way it goes. To me, my biggest takeaway so far from the MIA season is the parity is insane. I've covered it the last 2 years. 2 years ago, it was CM and St. John's Prep at the top. Ironically enough, neither were in the final. But the whole year, they were 1 and 2. They were clearly 1 and 2 going into the tournament. And last year, St. John's Prep was clearly the best team. And obviously, you get Winchester in the final, which highlights some of that parity. This year, to me, seems like the year where it's going to be like 11 and 13 in the championship for Division 1. Which means it's going to be like it's going to be Pope Francis and Hingham. It'll be the 1 and 2 seeds that end up being in it. But I think anybody can beat anybody this year. That's been clear. But I think the clearest, at least when I did my rankings this past week, the clearest thing is 1 and 2 right now. It's Pope Francis, number 1 for me, and Hingham, number 2. Now, other outlets have Hingham 1 and Pope Francis 2, but I think everyone is in the same ballpark of like, those are the 2 best teams. Pope Francis is deep, man. That team is deep. 3 legit forward lines that you can run at any point. Good on D, good in net with Nick Ritchie. Like, to me, that's a team that is built. They're built for a deep run. And not many MIAA teams are going to be able to have guys have 3 legit lines, and they do. So one kid I loved, an 09, Troy Hamlin. Centers, I think it's the second line. Out there a ton. Really good. He was at Select 15 camp this summer. Really good player. Absolutely someone that people should watch. If Pope Francis comes to near you or you want to go watch a Pope Francis game, he's really good. Michael McGrath up front is great as well. So I said Braden Wade earlier for a kid from St. John's Prep. It's Brandon Ward. Braden Wade plays for Holderness. I knew. I was like trying to look it up as I was talking. But it's Brandon Ward for St. John's Prep, who's really good. But Pope Francis and then Hingham too. Hingham crushed Marshfield the other day. They beat St. John's Prep earlier this year. Tony Messina has that team firing. So not a huge shocker there. And then you're right. I was at Arlington and CM New Year's Eve, which was a great game. I've seen a lot of crappy 0-0 MIAA games. And this was 0-0 for most of the game. And I was standing with the Boston Herald's Tom Mullern and Jake Levin over at the Globe. And we all kind of agreed going into the third. We were like, it's 0-0. This is a damn good hockey game. And CM surprised me. They lost 2-0. But CM lost a lot, and they've replaced those guys with a lot of skill. They've got some guys who can play. They have They have an 8th grader in net. And to me, this highlights sort of where the MIAA is, where, I think every level of hockey, you see this with prep, MIAA, it's younger. It's much younger. So I think 10 years ago, would an 8th grader be starting, for CM? Probably not. But Jackson Fleming's been kicking ass. So Jackson Fleming's been great. He played really well. Arlington just got 2 late goals. Arlington's really good. JP Missouri and Nolan Russell up front are just the dynamic duo that I think, could really carry that team forward. And it was a classic public school versus private school win. The private school outshot the public school like 2-1 the whole game. But Arlington's a gritty, skilled team. They find a way, and they did on New Year's Eve. So those are my big takeaways right now from the boys MIA. I do want to give a shout out. Framingham lost to Lincoln Sudbury, lost to LS. I was there. My uncle coaches the LS team. So I saw Paul Spear, the Framingham AD before, and my former coach, and he's like, you better not be standing on the LS side. And I'm like, honestly, Spear, like, I'm sort of unbiased in this game. I have my old team versus my uncle. Whatever happens, happens. And LS won 6-2. Framingham didn't even used to play LS. LS won by 4 goals. Never was really close. So I'm like, wow, this, Framingham, man, like, just not their year. Things aren't going well. Adam Aguilar's a great coach. First year, I'm like, man, that stinks. Like, the alumni game was the weekend before, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, man, I this is the guy. And then they go and beat Marshfield. 4-2. So I texted one of the assistant coaches, and I was like, that LS game is going to be a low. You'll see. Like, you're going to come out better against the teams you play in the My Hockey Live Cup. And they, even though they lost St. John Shrewsbury in the championship, they beat Marshfield 4-2. So I don't think my team's ever beat Marshfield. So congrats to them. Happy to see the Flyers pull out a W there. So good for them. It restored some faith.
Roll the huddle highlight.
That's right. Roll the one huddle highlight. But Framingham's good. And then LS too. LS beat Wellesley 7-1 on, and then they won the tournament against Waltham last weekend. So Lincoln Sudbury's done well too. So yeah, MIAA, anybody can win. I really believe that. So I think this is going to be the year you're going to see a lot of upsets come the Division I tournament, which it's exciting for us. Might not be as exciting for parents, but it's a good time. Yeah. So let's move to girls. Girls MIAA. You were at the Tenny Cup on New Year's Day.
Yes.
How was that?
It was good. I went for the consolation and the championship. So the consolation was Malden Catholic versus Duxbury, and the championship was Hingham versus Notre Dame. Hingham, little public-private crosstown rivals. It was great hockey games on both. Very tight, dramatic 2-1 wins for both games. Sort of like you said with your boys rankings, where it's kind of clearly 1 and 2 and kind of everybody else. For me, it's those 4 teams and then everybody else. And it's struggling to make of that next tier of, Peabody, Methuen, North Andover, Nauset, Bishop Fien cracked the rankings, Winthrop. Who else? I think, North Andover cracked the rankings. So that's it's that next tier of, and, Bill Rickett, who's having a good start. It's like that next tier of who's going to kind of emerge and, round out that top 5 and even the top 10. But, for me right now, it's those top 4 and, even the top 2, Hingham and Notre Dame. That game was awesome. Hingham started really well. Notre Dame kind of had some spurts here and there, but I thought it was, Hingham's game for the most part. And Erin Crowell had a great weekend in net for Notre Dame Hingham, and almost stole them the game against Hingham yesterday. I think she only had like 28 saves. It felt like a lot more. They were all really quality saves. And the biggest thing that kind of stood out for me watching Hingham was, obviously, Caroline Doherty gets all the headlines and recently became the all-time leading scorer for both boys and girls hockey in Hingham. So decent.